I think we should cover another really shining example of the power of democracy promotion in Syria, as the Al-Qaeda leader formerly known as Ahmad Al-Jolani, Abu Muhammad Jolani, is now Ahmad Al-Sharaa and meeting with Donald Trump in the White House and being hosted for friendly interviews on Fox News. Here's a look at here. He's looking Reagan-esque here.
In front of a portrait of Reagan.
In front of a portrait of Reagan in the Timu decorated, gold-plated, Vegas-looking new Oval Office. I'm sure Benjamin Franklin would be proud of this scene. There he is with Trump, the former deputy founder of ISIS, seated next to J.D. Vance in front of Trump. J.D. Vance and Trump Trump was a very staunch critic of the U.S. support for the so-called moderate rebels going back to 2013. But here it's all come full circle. Rubio's there as well. They all look so happy. It's almost like a fever dream, like I'm hallucinating. Like I saw this coming. We both saw this coming. We talked about it we covered it for years. I wrote a book called The Management of Savagery, how the U.S. national security state fueled the rise of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Donald Trump. And now the founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria and former deputy founder of ISIS is having a meeting in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. I mean, I can't think of more confirmation of the thesis of my book, for which I was mercilessly attacked again and again. I was just blocked after being booked to do my book launch at the main political bookstore in Washington, D.C., Politics and Prose. They canceled my talk. The windows of their bookstore were smashed for hosting me. And now reality comes crashing through again. The U.S. has been supporting jihadists around the world in order to weaken their geopolitical foes, starting in 1979, at least in Afghanistan. And this is the continuation or the culmination of that program. They toppled an independent government, the last strong or fairly strong independent Arab government, which was not subservient to the IMF and which had alliances with Russia and Iran and countries across the world that were not in line with the U.S. regime, but which had also sought relations with the U.S., which the U.S. rejected. And they toppled that government and now have a friendly government led by the former leader of Al-Qaeda. And Trump is spraying perfume on that figure in the White House, literally spraying perfume on him. It's iconic. Sorry, I can't get anything on screen because of StreamYard today.
This is men's fragrance. Right? Yeah. This is it's the best fragrance. Come here, man.
I have more here, sir.
Okay. So what we'll do is just take that, Joe, put it in, and then the other one is for your wife. How many ones? You guys I never know, right? You never know.
أنا أرسلت له هدايا فيها شيء أثري قديم، أول أبجدية صارت في لعبة التاريخ، أول ختم أيضا صار في التاريخ، أول نوتة موسيقية.
So
all of them were in Syria. أول تعريف الجمهورية أيضا صارت في العالم. That was made in the world.
Very good.
هي نسخة عن أشياء أثرية موجودة من.
This is the freedom that Syrians fought for, is to get Trump perfume sprayed on them by the president as they and like, why is he there? He's there because he's coming to Washington to, beg the remaining holdouts in Congress to lift the sanctions that helped destroy Syria and help put him in power. That's really was the main point of his visit, along to, help market him to the U.S. public. But, like, one of my takeaways from your book, The Management of Savagery, is that Trump actually benefits politically from demonizing migrants that are caused by our regime change wars, including in Syria. That does help fuel the rise of sort of chauvinist nationalists like him. And he also, spreads Islamophobia in his public rhetoric. But when you have the literal founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria now being willing to act inside of U.S. control, as opposed to the previous Syrian government, now all of a sudden he's welcomed with a friendly reception in the White House. So it's, Islamophobia is wielded by politicians like Trump to gain power. But when literally an Al-Qaeda leader can serve U.S. interests, he's given a very friendly reception.
And serve Israeli interests.
And serve Israeli interests too, of course, yeah.
I mean, they're clearly angling for Syria to join the Epstein Accords, also known as the Abraham Accords.
Yeah. But even if Syria doesn't formally join, because that just might be too obvious a sellout even if Syria doesn't even they've already de facto joined in the sense that they've weakened the axis that resists Israel. Syria was a critical land bridge for Hezbollah to receive arms from Iran in fighting back against Israel, and that's not happening anymore, obviously. So even if Syria doesn't even formally join the Epstein Accords, you should call it, it doesn't matter because they're already effectively a de facto member.
The the Pentagon has announced a de facto military base in Damascus, which will clearly be used against Iran and against the popular mobilization units in Iraq, and as a tripwire to trigger war. The Israeli military has advanced to the suburbs of Damascus and has received no resistance. And it looks like Syria's Al-Sharaa is ceding Mount Hermon, the highest point in Syria, which was part of Syria's strategic deterrence against Israel, its strategic depth, to Israel, de facto ceding it to them. But this is why he's welcomed in the White House and being hailed as this great leader. And then they're finally ending the Caesar sanctions, which destroyed the Syrian economy and helped drive one of the largest migration waves since World War II into Europe. I mean, the U.S. didn't really shoulder the burden, so what did they care? But it helped turn Europe right wing. And all the liberal forces in Europe supported that. That was another one of the kind of points I made in the management of savagery is the Syrian business class had a big meeting in DC, a really bizarre event. I think this was in DC. And I mean, you can see it's a very similar to the agenda in Venezuela, where there is a class of, you could call them bourgeoisie, who want to benefit from regime change and are seeking contracts. Now that the Caesar sanctions are gone, this is like a class of people, a class element that was ejected from Syria or left when their land was expropriated in order to redistribute land to reduce poverty among rural farmers in Syria by Hafez al-Assad. And this element used the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood kind of as a battering ram, even though most of them are secular, in order to try to destroy the Assad government and the Syrian state from within so they could come back into power and exploit Syria and go back to the old ways, the good old days, when inequality was much more extreme in Syria. And they were willing to destroy the Syrian economy through the Caesar sanctions. And you'll see one of the key figures, architects of the Caesar sanctions, Muaz Mustafa, the guy who brought John McCain on his illegal trip into Syria, jump up with excitement in the middle of this video. It was, by the way, this was tweeted by Charles Lister, who is basically like the DC lobbyist for the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda for several years, and is like, it feels like he's unofficially working for Al-Sharaa. Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, Tom Barak. We're from the Syrian Jewish community. As Mr. Barak said, from the very beginning of the liberation, we went to the White House, State Department, and Congress. We advocated and told them the sanctions must be lifted. Yay. And there's Moaz Mustafa right there clapping. And he's recruited these few Syrian Jewish figures to kind of like pose for pictures with Al-Sharaa in order to kosher him before the Israel lobby and many of the powerful Zionist forces that surround Donald Trump. At the State Department, they said, "Who are you to ask for the sanctions to be lifted?" I told them, "This is for the Syrian people." Okay, so it goes on and on, but
just like the cynicism of Moaz Mustafa applauding a call to lift the sanctions when he was the top lobbyist in Washington for those sanctions and repeatedly denied that they hurt the Syrian people. I mean, we dealt with this for years. Like when we would just point out the like reports coming out from the UN, there was a UN rapporteur on sanctions, Elena Dohan, who I interviewed a few times, just pointing out that like these sanctions were sadistic, that you know, people like Moaz Mustafa are saying, oh, they only target the Assad government, blah, blah, blah. That no, they were devastating ordinary people. Trump officials would brag that they exacerbated food and fuel shortages for everyday Syrians. That's a direct quote from some Trump officials in foreign affairs from a few years ago. So people like Moaz Mustafa would deny that, claim that all this was against the government. As soon as the job is done, the dirty war succeeds, the regime is overthrown. Now all of a sudden the sanctions are horrible, they have to go. And it just speaks to the cynicism of this whole enterprise. And it's why, like, whatever you thought about the Assad government, and I've met so many Syrians who have so many grievances, and you know, it's like, to me, like, that wasn't my business. That's for Syrians to take care of. It wasn't our business to impose. Nobody in Syria voted for the US government, for Joe Biden, Donald Trump, to decide whether or not they can have an economy, whether or not they can afford bread, whether or not they can afford or even have access to fuel. Because one of the things that the US and Israel did is literally they would bomb oil tankers trying to bring oil from Iran to Syria. They would literally bomb them. Israel did that hundreds of times. It's not our business whether or not Syrians can eat. And we have no right to impose these sanctions, whatever people inside Syria think of their own government. It's completely not our business. And you can see now the job has been achieved. Now, all of a sudden, we can acknowledge that the sanctions hurt ordinary Syrians, which is the same playbook in Venezuela, too. The whole point is to make the people suffer enough so that they turn against their government, which we don't like because they're outside of our control. It's the exact same playbook over and over.
And just one last point about this seemingly bizarre but actually fitting spectacle is the Fox News interview with Ahmad Al-Sharaa. We don't need to play it. He's asked about 9/11 and he said, well, I had nothing to do with it. I was a teenager at the time. I wasn't like one of the dancing Israelis or whatever. I didn't dance there. We don't know his opinion on it. Whatever. This is just like a week after Fox turned the Islamophobia up to 11 over Zohran Mamdani, who was campaigning in like Chelsea in gay clubs. He was like, turn it, you know, let's get turned up for my election in like gay nightclubs. And they're saying he's going to bring jihadism, like Sharia law to New York. It's going to be a communist jihadist takeover. Like the guy drinks with his wife, I'm sure, who's like this bohemian Brooklyn Bushwick Syrian artist. Like he's one of the most secular guys you can imagine. And Fox News was predicting that ISIS would take over New York. And then they welcomed the deputy founder of ISIS into their studio for a friendly interview. It just speaks to how Islamophobia doesn't actually exist in any real solid space. It's completely fungible and something that can be turned on and off to serve imperial imperatives. And that's why that no one has any principles at Fox News at all. No one has any principles around Trump Incorporated. It's all about transactional empire. And I wonder what Zohran Mamdani thinks about this. I think he was accused back in the day of being a chemical attack denier.
Well, all the more reason why I'm thrilled that it's victory, if that's the case, because again, if you look at one of the major deceptions of the Syria dirty war was to accuse Assad of gassing his own people. And, just think of the logic of Assad doing the one thing that he knows would invite U.S. military intervention. Even on its face, it was just such a transparent Iraq WMD level lie. But yet, unlike Iraq WMDs, which has been thoroughly discredited, a lot of people still believe the Assad chemical weapons claims, which is why one of the reasons why I spent a lot of time on that story. But still, we couldn't get people to even look at the OPCW leaks, which documented a cover-up that debunked one of those allegations. But that's an Iraq WMD level lie that is still very, very pervasive.
Well, the moderate rebels have arrived. The moderate rebels have come home.